Story 1. Am I the a-hole for checking my husband's dashcam footage on his car without his consent? My daughter and I recently went on a short trip out of state while my husband stayed as he had work and was supposed to look after our dog. On the last day of our trip, we got a call from my husband who was acting distraught and said that our dog Ellie had run away and that he could not find her. He claimed she just bolted away from him in the park into some bushes and he could not find her. Our dog is quite small, a mini poodle mix and almost 13 years old. She is still active, but it's really unlike her to run away from us, and I was suspicious, but chose to believe my husband, and me and my daughter were in grief but did not want to blame him. When we came back home, he seemed surprisingly okay, unlike us. Ever since the pandemic, my husband started working from home, and he's always been annoyed at how much attention we gave Ellie and hated how Ellie begged to sit on our laps and his while he worked. A few days later, we got a call from an animal rescue in a neighboring state quite far from us that she had been found. I picked the phone, and it was on our landline, which we almost never use these days, but was the contact on the microchip. I told my husband, and he just said, "That's great, I'm so happy," but it felt kind of blunt and insincere. I said it is strange that she got so far, and he responded that someone must have stolen her and then abandoned her. This made little sense to me as to why that would happen. When he was out drinking with his buddies, I copied the videos from his dash cam for the days I was away and saw that he had indeed taken Ellie far out of state and clearly dropped her in front of his car, thrown a frisbee-like object into a field, yelled fetch, and drove off without her. I was livid and confronted him, and he just stupidly muttered how he dropped her there so she could find a farm and have a better life, and then the next day got really angry at me for viewing his dash cam and called me and my daughter a-holes. I mean, first off, I wouldn't be surprised if the update to this story updated the text to ex-husband, because what a gross lie and what a gross thing to do. But maybe not. Maybe it's not that extreme for some people and you work through it, whatever. But for him to then get mad at you for checking the dashcam footage, like, you're not going through his phone. You thought things seemed off, you looked into it, and then it proved that he was lying to you. And for him to get upset about that is ridiculous. You don't get to be like, how could you do that? How could you not trust me? Because you're not trustworthy, you a-hole! That's why! I'm sorry. You don't get to call someone out on not trusting you when you've done something not trustworthy. I don't think you've got a leg to stand on there, pal. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for shouting at my ex in front of my daughters? I, 37 male, have 3 girls, 8, 10, and 12. Their mother walked out on us for another man when our youngest was around 4. My ex still stays in contact, though, and pays child support. A few weeks ago, while doing laundry, I saw red spots in my oldest's underwear. I asked her if she knew about it, and she cried and told me she tried to call her mom, but my ex didn't call back. She's been stuffing toilet paper in her underwear, hoping that would work. I explained to her that periods are nothing to be ashamed of and found some great resources online for us to review together. I took her to the store to pick out brands of feminine products she wanted to use. She picked Playtex Sports because she's a gymnast. After we were done, I decided I should do the same thing with my other 2. My 12-year-old volunteered to be part of prepping them, and we made a whole night of it. It was wonderful, and I learned a lot. I even learned what a menstrual cup is and how they benefit the environment. The other day, my ex called back. I usually arrange a video chat and leave the room so they can have some alone time, and when they're done chatting, I'll come back in to talk about boring co-parenting stuff like school, bills, etc. This last time, my ex was furious with me for talking about periods with the girls. She shouted at me that I was sick and perverted. Why didn't I call her myself if I knew it was so urgent? I could have called one of their grandmas/aunts, but my mom has dementia, while her mom and sisters call me a loser because I teach kindergarten, so I'm not fond of them. My ex told me I was being immature and should have just toughed it out for the girls. This really peed me off. So I shouted back that maybe if she wasn't such a deadbeat and answered her goddamn phone once in a while, she could have handled this. I brought up everything she does that hurts them. She hasn't been to a single soccer game, piano recital, or gymnastics meet in 2 years. Every other weekend when they come home from her house, they go straight to their rooms, only to emerge hours later asking me why she loves her new husband more than them and what did they do to make her leave. My ex responded by saying I should tell them it's not their fault, I couldn't satisfy her, and I screamed, "F you," and she just smirked and pointed behind me saying, "Look what you did." When I turned around, my 8-year-old and 10-year-old were standing in the doorway crying. It broke my heart. I never shout, so I know I scared them. My 12-year-old stormed in and started screaming at her mom, and while I appreciate her sticking up for me, this is not a battle I want her fighting. My ex hung up before I could fully de-escalate the situation, and let's just say the girls have been given free reign of the ice cream and limitless hours of video games because I feel so bad. I even watched all the Twilight movies with them, so don't say I don't love them, but in this instance, am I the a-hole for shouting? No, you're not the a-hole! She was pushing all the buttons, and yeah, maybe you shouldn't have yelled, but it doesn't make you an a-hole. It makes you a human with emotions, and you just couldn't take it anymore because you were angry on behalf of your daughters, and for some reason this story really got to me. It's really sweet what you did. You sat down and taught them properly. You weren't the kind of dad who's like, "Ooh, guys can't handle this." Like, you did so much for them, and that mom sounds just not great, and I feel bad that those poor girls have to put up with her nonsense, but I feel really glad knowing that there's a dad as cool as you who's, so caring for them and who feels bad for a very human response to a very infuriating situation. And I'm sure they appreciate the ice cream and video games, but even more so, I'm very certain that they appreciate you. You are my person of the week. I don't know. Do we have graphics for that? Probably not, but we should because you deserve it. Story 3. Entitled parents ask me to remove my prosthetic. For a bit of background, I, 24 male, am half deaf on my left side due to a birth defect. I also have a misshapen ear due to a combination of birth defects and surgeries to repair it. When I got a bit older, I started wearing a prosthetic ear on that side to cover it up. It wasn't perfect, but it looked better than what I originally had. Unfortunately, though, these types of prosthetics don't last forever and have to be replaced every so often as the color begins to fade and it tears around the edges. It is removable. I was due for a new one and was just waiting on my insurance to approve it before the prosthetic sent it to me. For the actual story, I was working in a pediatric emergency room at the time and had just received an order to perform an EKG on a roughly 8 to 10-year-old patient. When I walked into the room and began to introduce myself to the family, mom, dad, and the patient, the mother looked up at me and gasped. I was taken aback and asked her what was wrong. She told me, "Your ear is really freaking me out. Is it supposed to be some kind of Halloween costume or something? It seems inappropriate for a children's hospital." Mind you, it was only October 2nd or 3rd. I explained to her that I had a disability for which I wear a prosthetic. She then asked me to take it off because it is making me uncomfortable. I politely declined because it's held on by medical glue and not so easy to take on and off. I proceeded to do my job and perform the EKG, but throughout the procedure, the father decided to repeatedly probe me for personal information, asking me things like, "Are you sure you're qualified to do this?" and "How long did you go to school before this job?" I answered his questions, but could very obviously tell that he was insinuating I was mentally disabled and shouldn't be working in this field. I finished the procedure as quickly as I could and left, not saying anything to the patients, but did wish the child well. I gave the report to the bedside nurse and asked her not to call me for this patient unless they absolutely needed to. I kept my mouth shut at the time, but in retrospect, I wish I had spoken up for myself more. Some people just have no respect for those with disabilities. Holy crap! What miserable people. What an awful thing for people to imply or say to someone else. That is infuriating. Maybe you should have done an x-ray on each of their chests to see if they still had working hearts. What absolutely gross thing to do to anyone, to comment on someone's personal image, be it a prosthetic or where that they wear their hair or clothes or anything like that, and be like, "I don't like that, change it for me." Get the F out of here, you entitled, heartless person. This makes me so mad. I want to go back to the previous story with the super nice dad that made me cry. Like, These people make me want to scream. I'm so sorry for the poster having to deal with people like this. If it's any consolation, they probably don't have that many friends, so they're probably kind of miserable. Would be nice if they were just nicer people, and I'm sure they could be happier too. What an easy solution to a problem. Story 4, entitled Mom Wants My ID. So, I work at a grocery store. I'm also 24 years old, but my family has a chronic baby face. This is important to the story. It's my day off, and I wanted to get some chores done, like clean the garage and give my dogs a bath, but I'm out of dog shampoo, and the garage has a major spider infestation, so I ran to the store I work at for dog shampoo and bug killer. I then pass the beer aisle and think to myself how awesome a nice beer would be after I get all my work done and pick out a couple single bottles of brands I've been meaning to try out. Behind me, I hear someone loudly exclaim, "Ahem!" I look behind me and see a woman with a full cart and a baby in the seat. I assume I must have been in her way, as I did have earbuds in and take a while to read the labels when I decide to try a new beer. "Sorry," I say, moving out of the way. "You're not old enough to buy that, are you?" She scoffs. "Yes, I am. I know I look really young. I get it a lot." "Don't lie to me. I have 3 boys. 2 of them are teens. I know what you kids get up to." She then points to the bug killer in my cart. "And I bet you're getting that to get high off, aren't you?" "Miss, I'm old enough. It's my day off work and I'm getting some stuff done, like killing spiders in my garage, giving my dogs a bath, and then relaxing with a nice beer." "Then show me your ID." "No." "Then you're lying." "Lady, I don't need to show you my ID unless you're a cop or an employee here. It has my private information on there." She huffs and looks around, possibly for an employee or someone else to back her up, but no one was around, so I just leave. A few minutes later, I checked out in the self-scan, and guess who I see again? Entitled Mom. She glares at me again and watches as I scan the beers and then wait for the employees to clear me for it. When the employee walks up, Entitled Mom loudly says, "You better check his ID, he's underage." The employee just kind of looks dumbfounded at her. "Miss, he works here. I know for a fact he's over 21. I sold him beer before." Entitled Mom goes quiet. She probably wasn't expecting that I did in fact work here. She scoffs and says, "Well, can't ever be too careful these days," and walks off. The employee and I have a laugh about it as she scans my ID and then I pay for my stuff. I think that's the worst thing that has ever happened about how young I look. I had in the past had a smoke shop employee doubt me until he saw my ID, but this was the craziest so far. Oh, thank God that woman was there to call into question your age to make sure you're not illegally buying beer, because there's no way, if she hadn't been there, you would have just been able to buy beer illegally if you were underage. Stores have no ways of preventing it. They don't have any way to, they check your ID. They check everyone's ID. They check my ID, and I'm 40, and I know I might not look 40, I hope. But I know for a fact I look over 21. I think there's no question to most people I encounter that I at least look old enough to buy some beer. I mean, this isn't like 4K, but trust me, there's wrinkles around these eyes, folks. And they still card me pretty much every dang time. And guess what? I'm guessing they're gonna card the babyface people too, ladies. So maybe you don't need to be some grocery store vigilante bugging people when there's a process to take care of that. You're not needed, ma'am. Go away. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.